gender and sexual diversity clients for over 30 years. I think it's really good to see the gay community getting involved in demonstrating their support for trans people, who very often feel unwelcome in our organisations and in our meeting places. Of course, membership of the lesbian and gay communities isn't necessarily something all trans people want, but nonetheless I'm really glad that GALHA have hosted this event, and I'm pleased to be supporting it. I feel others on this panel will have much more experience of transphobia than me. As a non-trans man, I'm aware that I enjoy lots of cisgender privileges. In fact, I found a website which lists 30 plus. And I thought I'd read you just 10, because I couldn't think of too many things to say. I can use public restrooms without fear of verbal abuse, physical intimidation, or arrest. I can use public facilities such as gym locker rooms and store changing rooms without stares, fear, or anxiety. Strangers don't assume that they can ask me what my genitals look like and how I have sex. My validity as a man or human is not based on how much surgery I've had or how well I pass as non-transgender. I have the ability to walk through the world and generally blend in, not constantly being stared at or gawked at or whispered about or pointed at or laughed at because of my gender expression. I can access gender-inclusive spaces. Okay, it's sitting the other way, so I'm going to read what it says. You can access gender-exclusive spaces such as RadFem conferences or Take Back the Night and not be excluded due to your trans status. Strangers call you by the name you provide and don't ask what your real name, by that they mean your birth name, is, and then assume that they have the right to call you by that name. Your identity is not considered a psychiatric illness. As you're probably aware, gender identity disorder is still in the DSM-4. It's soon to be redefined as gender dysphoria or gender incongruence, and so finally psychiatry is losing the term disorder, but it's still going to be a mental health diagnosis. You're not required to undergo an extensive psychological evaluation in order to receive basic medical care. And you don't have to defend your right to be part of queer, and gays and lesbians will not try to exclude you from their equal rights movement because of your gender identity or any equality movement, including feminist rights. I think it's quite a salutary list, really. I found it quite helpful to kind of be aware of some of the privileges I just take for granted. And I'm aware that from my work as a therapist working with trans clients, of the significance of being on the receiving end of transphobia. Even those incidents which may have been termed the microaggressions of everyday life, and Rebecca talked about quite a lot of those, they can sting really badly and have devastating consequences. I've seen suicide statistics running at around, for trans people running at around 35 to 40%, some research was showing. For LGBs, it's about 20%. And Rebecca's figures were much higher than that. Earlier today, I was preparing a presentation for some training that I'm giving in Malta, and I found some slides on the consequences of minority stress. And that's really what we're talking about, I think. And although this work that I found was describing the impact on LGBT people, I think it's probably just as relevant to trans people. It bears saying that research into trans health issues is still very scant, and it's an area that needs much more research. We should be wary from extrapolating from research that's done into one group and assuming that it can be transferred across to the other. For example, for many decades, bisexuals have been lumped in with lesbians and gay men, and it's only been in the last few years that specific research has been undertaken into bisexual mental health, and the figures show that much poorer mental health amongst bisexuals than amongst lesbians and gay men. So I'll offer this with some caveats, but as you'll hear, I suspect these symptoms are going to be very similar. One of the slides that I found showed these symptoms as a consequence of verbal abuse, so being called names. It's difficult to understand the emotional aftermath. There's a minimising of the feelings you experience, agitation, restlessness, sleep disturbances, headaches, diarrhea, and deterioration in personal relationships all seem common consequences of being verbally abused. Another slide depicted what happens when one witnesses homophobia. So you see it happening to others, and people find that there's increased depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress symptoms, reinforced internalized depression, so blaming yourself, and increased fears for one's safety. And that's just from witnessing someone else having an attack. And I think all of those probably would apply to trans people too, in their experience of being verbally abused or witnessing others being transphobic. My work as a therapist is often about helping people helping to build resilience to the stresses of living with a stigmatised identity. But it's not easy pushing on when much of the world wants to put you down, and I'm frequently humbled at the resourcefulness, the creativity and the strength of character of people. Society's response to gender non-conformity is partly what needs to change, and that's what I think tonight is about, and what we're here to discuss and to learn from each other. So a few positive ways of dealing with transphobia, and because I've only had 5 minutes, I'll give some of the ones that maybe you didn't get a chance to deliver, Becky, although I'm sure you'll find a way to get them in. But some of the ways of dealing with transphobia that I found are reporting it, going to support groups, using victim support, writing about it, taking out physical exercise and getting it out of your system, playing sports, going to the gym, doing that kind of thing. Facing the problems and not turning to drugs. I mean, there's a tendency, I think, for many of us in the LGBT community to self-medicate from the stress of being who we are. Educating oneself and others. I think we've got speakers who have done, using that one a lot. Treats. Political action, and I guess this would count as a political action. Using one's network of friends. Surrounding oneself with positive images. Counselling and changing thought patterns, and taking breaks away from the front line. And I think they're all quite useful strategies. Okay, thank you.
Okay, my name is Sunny, and I am co-chair of FTM London, which is a peer support group for trans masculine identified people. It's a peer support group set up in 1997, it's still running. It's run by members, for members, and just this year we're now a charity, so we have trustees. Which is really positive, and we're going to allow non-members to become members. So people that aren't trans-masculine can then become members, which will help us in our outreach work and stuff like that, which is very positive. We also have a SOFAs group, which is significant others, friends, family and allies, which is very useful as well for the family members of people. Through that group, and I'm also the lead on a health needs assessment funded by the NHS in Hertfordshire. It's the first one in the country, and that's just come to an end, and I'm just finishing off the report for that. I've already got a commissioner on board from the Children and Families part in Hertfordshire, who's already contacted Gender Intelligence to have some training for her staff of commissioners in Hertfordshire, because that was one of the highlighted things that we needed continuous professional development for people that are commissioning services. which is very positive. Because if people aren't aware of trans like asterisk, which is very broad, if they're not aware of the community's needs, and it's communities rather than just community, because within that community there's lots of different communities, which I've realised as well. And through transition, it's so fluid that I could belong to any community within the community. So I keep changing as well. Yeah, so transphobia is, it's not really a word that I choose to use, because I think that if I give someone a weapon to use against me, it means that I then need a shield to protect myself. So I don't really actually use that word myself, but because I'll be talking about it, I actually need to use it, which I don't really normally use it. So yeah, I've been attacked because of my gender before transition, because certain people weren't actually able to box me, and because it made them confused, then they needed to get rid of me. It didn't quite work, because I was using alcohol to change the way I felt as well, so that I could kind of not have to look at my own reflection anyway, because I didn't really like what I saw. So if I was not really present, then I could kind of disappear. It was okay in my local pub, but in the world outside of that pub it was quite difficult. So if I was going from one place to another to get my alcohol, and not in the local pub, then I had a little bit of trouble really. But since I've started my transition, my life's become a lot easier, because I can't disappear into society. I don't when I'm alone, because certain parts of my body are different to other people's. So it confuses me, so I get internalised, that word that I don't like to use, because what I see outside is not the same as mine, so I get really confused then. So I could, before I used to kind of have my own internalised hatred, and I swallowed alcohol to get rid of that, but it stopped working, so then I had to face my own hate, which was probably external stuff, internal, and it got very confusing. Anyway, so I'll read you a story. About 12 years ago, I used to go clubbing quite a bit, and I met a really nice nice person who was changing. She was becoming who she really was, and me and her really connected. And after I kind of had this, I had enough of alcohol, so I needed to be rehabilitated in her. I needed to stop drinking and to face who I really needed to be, which is me. And I thought, right, I'm going to contact this person, and I knew she would be on the internet because she was an underground like DJ, so I knew she'd be around. And she hadn't been replying to some of the emails that I've been sending, so I thought I'll find out where she is now, and I'll let her know that, that I'm becoming who I always knew that I was, that she could see, but I was too drunk to actually want to see. So I found this out that she'd written this anyway. However, this is 2 years later after she'd had 4 years of therapy to become who she was, what I saw. However, 2 years later, she spoke sadly about the hatred she routinely encountered following her decision to live as a woman, particularly from viciously homophobic gangs roaming the estates around her Hackney home. Experiencing aggression and receiving hate has been a constant for quite a few years, so much so that maybe I'm almost becoming used to daily abuse, she suggested. I've always been spiritual and aesthetic and believe that hate can be more contagious than love, and every day I try to forgive people's ignorance and not to get contaminated, she wrote. At times it's hard, but there's not other, I think it's supposed to be no other way out. We live in a society of resentment, rejection of freedom and homophobic hate. Then there's these things that said the main issue that affects the mental well-being of trans people are related to discrimination. As a result of discrimination, trans people can have conflicting and confusing feelings. The conflict may lie within themselves. For example, if their trans status goes against their religious beliefs. So, anyway, I carried on kind of like looking for my friend, and then I found, directly after this, about 5 minutes after it, I found another one, and I don't know where it is, it's somewhere lost in my bedroom, but it said that she was found dead in her flat, and I thought, oh no, I didn't get the opportunity to tell her that I'd become me. And, but I can almost sense her spirit. She took her life because these gangs broke into her flat and killed her parrot. So that's, to me, that's that word that I don't like to use. So for me, knowing that I was going to become Sunny and live my life as the true me, I knew that I had to not only just transition, but also try to change the access of people as they medically transition, so they have a smoother journey into becoming who they are, and so that if they need to access hormones to actually change their own reflection, then they can do that, because I think it starts with self-love, and then hopefully the world follows through, but who knows, you know. But anyway, that's it from me.
It's quite difficult going last after all that, isn't it? Everybody said everything. So what can I say really? Well, firstly, sorry for being late. Okay, traffic being what it is makes it quite difficult to get here. As I was listening to what some of the people were saying before me, I thought, what am I going to stand up here in front of you and say? And I thought, well, I could start by saying my name, when I present like this, is Gina, and I'm trans. That kind of makes it seem a bit like an AA meeting, doesn't it? Where we're all sort of so that's not really a very good way to start. So I thought what I'd do is just tell you a little bit about me to start off with, and a little bit about my story, and then I'd go and tell you a little bit more about the organisations that I work with and represent in sort of my volunteer work as a trans spokesman. Person. Yeah, my name's Joanna. Transgender is quite a difficult thing for me. When I'm a member of the Beaumont Society and the trustee of the Beaumont Trust, and we, as an organisation, we go up and down the country and we give lots of talks, lots of training presentations to not only anything from like the WI, quite a strange group in terms of how you interact with them, by the way up to the NHS, and I've just today come down from working with a police authority just north of Manchester. So, and we talk about transphobia to groups of like about 20, 30 people and the issues that trans people face. And when we try to do that, it's a very difficult subject to hit accurately, because my experience as a trans person is obviously very different to Dee's and obviously very different to Becky's, okay? Because clearly I don't have a permanent association with the gender that I present in today. Okay, so I have a temporary association with it. But so my experience of transphobia is very different to what Delia's may be or Becky's may be. Okay, different. I wouldn't say it's better. I wouldn't say it's worse. It's just different. Okay, it's not a competition. I don't like waving flags saying nothing's worse. So I first realised that I was a little bit different, probably about 15, 16 years ago. And nothing really amazing, just I was going through a divorce, a bit of a low point in my life. I was chatting to friends, one in particular. I was staying around his house, and he sort of got to the end of the evening and said, like, clear off. And I was like, well, it's only 6 o'clock, why do I have to clear off now?
I was going through a bit of a low point. And eventually, after lots of to and fro, he told me that he was trans and he was going out to a nightclub. And I'd made such a pain in the arse of myself about why I had to go there and then, that I kind of felt obliged to go with him. So yeah, literally went to Cambridge Town Centre, got myself some clothes, and went out. So quite an unusual background. I didn't have a feeling of dysphoria beforehand. So yeah, did that and had a great time. Really strange. People like myself, often you think that we live in secret, particularly from our wives and partners. But it's really strange when you get out on the scene and you start meeting people and you start talking to people. They're actually some of the most genuine people that you'll ever meet, because they're giving you like access to this very intimate side of their personality. Yeah, that they wouldn't normally share with other people or try to keep private sometimes. And that gives rise to the first thing that I wanted to talk about was when we talk about transphobia as trans people, and when you hear it and you absorb this kind of message from people like ourselves, there are two types for me and both my organisations. We have internalised transphobia, which is how I feel about myself in this image, whether it's the right image for me, whether I look perfect, whether I can walk down the high street, is somebody looking at me or giving me the evil eye. And then we have externalised transphobia, which is how the rest of society all interact and perceive me as a person. And Delia talked about some of that in terms of organisations. And externalised transphobia can be police, the NHS, organisations, society at large, particular pockets of it. Bizarrely, it can also be the transgender community. Quite strangely, the trans, kind of like a hierarchy, like transsexual people kind of look down on transvestite people, kind of look down on like gender neutral people. It's kind of a bit strange how it works out, but there is a very real feeling of that within our own community. And that's one of the things that makes transphobia very difficult to define, because for me, it's very different. I can only speak about my experience, but my experience is very different to gender neutral people, very different to females and male people. So after going out to Cambridge, started going out and seeing, all quite good fun, and it's kind of like a Cinderella moment for you. You go out and it's, go out, get dressed, go out. It's important to do it that way around. So yeah, get dressed, go out, have some fun, then come back, all nice and, all quite good fun. Nice and Cinderella, put your normal clothes on, you think, oh, it's a bit boring, isn't it? You've got to go out and earn some money now, and do all that kind of stuff. So I kind of thought that actually, kind of normal person, I want to have fun, I want to enjoy myself, I want to go out, meet nice people, have good fun. So I thought, well, why aren't I doing this already? At 27 years old, just got divorced, low point in my life, why don't I just go out and have fun, start being me, reinventing who I am? So I did. Very easy. Then, a couple of years later, you sort of get established, get comfortable in what you're wearing, get your look, all that kind of stuff. Then the aspect of sexuality creeps in. So, yeah, done the married thing before. Did it work? Not so much. So I thought, I'll do the gay thing. Yeah, quite interesting. Yeah, bit of an experience. So that was okay, no problem at all. Started seeing a guy, got engaged, a bit weird. Wanted me to transition. So started going to see a counsellor over in Cambridge, taking pills, all that kind of jazz. Interesting. Then I thought, that's not me. Why am I doing this? Am I doing it for me, or am I doing it for the guy that I'm with? And very quickly realised I was doing it for the guy that I was with. But his, in our relationship, his projection of what he wanted me to be was very different to mine. He was projecting onto me that he wanted me to be a woman, kind of almost that he wasn't really prepared to be gay, or admit that he was gay. So in order to square it for himself, it was easy for him if I was female. So we sat down, had a chat, said, sorry Andy, this isn't for me, so what do you want to do? He said, well, it's okay, that's fine, we'll see how it goes, you might change your mind, a bit strange. Kind of cling to a little bit. So yeah, we carried on seeing one another. I stopped going to counselling, stopped taking hormones. And yeah, about 3 months later I was in the shower and I was thinking, that's darn strange. I don't seem to be like changing. I'm not, you know, my male gene hasn't kicked in anymore. So I thought, that's a bit strange. So I saw the doctor and I said, well, it takes a long time to build up that stock of hormones to change gender. It's probably going to take a little bit of time to stop and change out. So I think that's fine. Then one day I came home, Andy was home, said, do you want some dinner? Yeah, fine. Off he went, made dinner. I thought, I'll go out, surprise him, go out to the kitchen, and you know, give him a like, tap on the bum, all that kind of playful stuff. And I found him crushing hormone pills in my tea. He's like, no, hang on a minute, that's not entirely right, is it? No wonder I'm not changing as quickly as I thought I was. I'm changing in the wrong way. So we had a chat about it. So we tried to have a chat about it. You know, I was like really angry that I'd been so betrayed. And then you kind of get overtaken by this kind of rage within you, and kind of bottom of the way. But your body's changed. Yeah? You're in a relationship with guys. Your body's changed. You're not physically able to defend yourself. What you can do is like slap away. Realised that, and he decided that was the time that he wanted sex for some reason. Weird guy thing going on. So he tried to rape me. Quite entertaining, you know, really horrific experience. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But got out of that. Very, very lucky. Got out of that. It's good. This next bit's going to sound a bit bad. Had some handcuffs in the bedroom, and he knocked his head, stunned himself on the side of the bed. And I handcuffed him up, called the police, and the Cambridge police come along and arrested him. So very good. Cambridge Police, very, very good organisation. If you're ever going through that experience, I recommend you have it. So yeah, got myself out of that situation. Had to stand up in front of a judge. Stood in front of the judge, said, well, hi, my name's Joe. This is what's happened. Oh, okay, that's very good. Then nothing. It's like, well, I can't say whether or not that it did happen. I can't say you're not assaulted, you're not physically assaulted, there's been no penetration. All the kind of things we judges use when they talk about rape. No penetration, no assault. You're in a relationship where you are presenting as a woman, you are taking hormones. I've only got your word for it that he's actually doing this, and you're not doing it yourself. So just disappear. So at that point I thought, yeah, that's not entirely fair. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to do something like that. That's not entirely right. So I started working with the Beaumont organisation, Beaumont Trust at that organisation at that point, and really to talk about defence of trans people. At that time, it was probably around about 2000, 2001. Still not as popular as it is, or still not as prevalent in the media and social networking as it is now. Really, because I was, for no better reason than, as a friend of mine, Ian Smith, was saying up at Lincoln today, Nuneaton today, you get to a point where the police have done gay, and they've got a training budget, and they need to do something else. And he said, that's what we're doing now. We're doing trans now. Yeah. Okay. So when I talk to the police, I kind of talk to the police and say, yeah, I'm not sure I agree with the word being done. But okay. But in a way, a lot of what the gay community has gone through before us actually sets quite a nice roadmap of where we have to go and the kind of battles we have to face, and the kind of training, the education message that we have to put out. So that's what I do. Part-time trans woman, work as a man and a woman, so slightly different. Causes some issues for some people. And I travel up and down the country in the central region, working with the police, working with the NHS, working with other organisations, some companies as well, just to sort of say, right, okay, this is what being trans means. Okay, it seems to be a particular. Don't think just because I'm here talking to you, it's a male to female thing. Only there are other dimensions to it. And this is how you should train your people, but also this is the kind of social, the kind of organisational policy, or the kind of training and the kind of language you should use when you're talking to people like me. So that's a little bit about it. Just very quick, I've got a little bit of time, just very quickly. So, we talked about, or something about people before, we talked about any different types of transphobia. So, really awkward word to use. I happen to agree with some actually. I don't personally like the word, but it's a word, it's caught on, it's called public imagination, so people use it. So, internalised transphobia is all about me. And it's a very real thing, but you don't often hear it, when we talk about transphobia, you don't often hear it talked about. But it's all about me. Me, it's like diva. So it's all about how I'm feeling about myself and that projection that I'm taking on from society about what people should look like, what people expect of me, how I should behave, how I should react, how I should present myself. So, and I carry that around with me all the time. All the time. And that affects sometimes how I present, how I feel about myself, and my own image of myself. And you know, when all three things go badly against you and they all like hit a low point and you all feel like, you know, you feel like a bit crap, that's how it is. But very real thing, very real aspect of transphobia that we don't often talk about. Because it's much more fun to talk about the externalised side of things. And because it's much more public, isn't it? You know, I don't want to put myself out there as a person and say, I want you to feel sorry for me because, you know, my bum looks big in these jeans. I don't want that, you know, I don't want you joining in with my own insecurities. It's much more fun to talk about the externalised transphobia. When we talk about organisations that are institutionally transphobic or homophobic, much more fun, isn't it? We feel that when we use those grouping words about those organisations, we're kind of empowering ourselves and making ourselves feel wise or presenting ourselves as wise people. For me, myself, I hear lots of stuff about the police. I mean, you know, people say, oh, police is this and police is that. There are always good things and bad things about the police, but I can honestly tell you from my experience throughout the central region that the police are pretty good, to be fair. You know, they are trying. But it's not like, you know, a lot of organisational behaviour, if you study this kind of stuff, you don't change it like switching on a light switch. You know, it doesn't just go ping just because you've like come to a 30-minute presentation and it goes, twang, everybody's now anti-transphobic and we're going to go off and magically go down that yellow brick road. It takes time, so, but they are trying. They genuinely are trying. One of the worst organisations, at this point I always say, I hope no one's in the NHS. I would imagine there is going to be somebody in the NHS, but this isn't a slight against any of you, okay? One of the worst organisations is the NHS, unfortunately. Don't know why it is. People in there are really good, but as an organisation, it all seems to weld together in such a way that it either becomes very difficult to get a simple message into it and then cascade it out to all the people, or because it's so big, it's very difficult to work out which part of it you talk to get the right message in. And also, because they're all doctors and they go to the university and they learn a little bit about me for a week, they all kind of feel they know it already. Yeah. It's really difficult, isn't it? So it's a bit of a shock when you say, no, hang on a minute, that's not quite right. So externalised transphobia tends to be all about, you know, all about society. And that's more often than not the stuff that you'll see when we talk about transphobia in the press. We talk about the Judy Birchall incident and the Richard, whatever, Little John incident. It always tends to be about. Now, as a person, I have an opinion about that, both those incidents. But the last thing I'll leave you with is unfortunate because as the Beaumont organisations that I represent, we've publicly taken a position to say that we won't talk about any of those specific instances. Okay, so if you have any questions about those, I'm going to fob them off to somebody else. Okay, because we're kind of linked to one of them, and we understand at the moment where that is in terms of its due process. We can't actually; it's inappropriate for us to comment. Okay, so I'm not going to mention which one or if any of them it is. But if you have a specific question about a specific instance, I'm not the person to ask that. I'll talk about it in general terms, but I'm not going to drag myself down to this has happened or that's happened. And that's a little bit over, but that's.
Massive thank you to all our speakers. They were so varied. Fantastic. We've got about 25 minutes left for some questions. Do we have any questions?
Hi, I'm Jonathan, and I'm a gay man, and I still found so much identification with every speaker. I think it's because coming from a position of minority, I'm also trying to say, my name is Jonathan, I'm often asked about my real name, so when someone said, I thought, yeah, well, I can relate with that one. 2013 came. I think my question is around positive portrayal in the media. I've heard the negative stuff. I do remember a really good documentary on BBC Three about this trans man. So, he went to university trying to out himself, etc. I try to think of other positive role models. I'm thinking, oh, there's Data International, I don't know. So I suppose it's, what are your thoughts about role models, both in the news and in drama? I can only think, was it Sean B? Was playing that transvestite? I can't really think of positive role models when, you've got the lesbian sitcom, with Sue Perkins now, and you've got the gay sitcom with Ian Cullen and Derek Jacobi starting this month. It'd be lovely to see drama follow too. So yes, that's my question to you, role models and portrayal of media, arts and drama.
I know that Becky has opinions on this.
Thanks. Well, I was thinking of adding to that this Chloe Savigny in a programme about a trans woman who was a hitman, inverted commas. We also saw, about 18 months ago, My Transsexual Summer, which gave the public the opportunity to interact with a very engaging group of people. I think on the whole that was seen as a very positive experience for us as a community, as people withdrew the being rejected for a job because she was trans, and again with Sarah finding it difficult to get a home because no one wanted to share with a trans person, and so we saw those experiences, and people for the first time were actually confronted with those particular realities. And I think that has changed a lot of people's impressions about trans people. So much so that when we actually had this petition about Richard Littlejohn and his article was launched, and however you may feel about that, it's not something I'm particularly comfortable with. There were over 200,000 signatures to that. There aren't that many trans people in the United Kingdom. We clearly have made friends out there, and we have our allies, and people are beginning to see us as real people rather than cut out characters from Coronation Street. And that has to be a good thing.
Can I just add to that? I have transsexual friends who I know are really upset by some of the portrayal in the media, specifically Matt Lucas and David Williams.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, I understand them being upset with all that "I'm a lady," which is a grotesque parody, but what about things like drag acts? Is
Panto Dame.
Sorry?
Panto Dame.
Panto Dame, I've been a Panto Dame. Is that offensive?
Can I pass on that with
Yeah,
someone
do.
else? I think I've had that to say. I was quite
if you look at transgender as a collective umbrella term, you've got all the other headings under there as well. So yes, you've got drag king, queen, yes, you've got all those headings there. Everybody's entitled to do what they want. The only issue which comes through, which I think we both agree on, or we all agree on, is when the media particularly look for a person who they will put up as full ridicule. And that person, quite often by accident, is not normally by design, the press will hunt them down. And what happens with that is that it sets out a public perception of this is what somebody should be like. Now I'm certainly, from my perspective, because I'm working now at corporate board level, particularly at sport and also across some major large national multinationals, turning up in a board meeting when you've got 30 or 40 stuffy suits sitting in a room, and I rock up. Yeah, you can see them, okay. But within minutes, that barrier's gone. So role model is not necessarily what you can see in the press. It is actually systematically going around removing perceptions. It's normally perception based on fear or misunderstanding, or bless it, the Daily Hate, sorry, Daily Mail, Daily Hate. It's projections. It's just pure ignorance from a lot of people, just don't understand what T in all its forms actually mean. The more we can have positive stories for the right reason, then perception and public perception will improve.
I think for me personally, media is a really difficult thing. It's a bit of a curse, unfortunately. You need it to get a message out there about transphobia or the transgender agenda or what's important to us. But you need it to act responsibly once it's got that message in terms of how it presents it. And one of the worst things I think about media is that we often forget that it's a business. It's not interested in me or Delia or Becky or any of you, unfortunately. I wish that I could say it was, but it isn't. It exists exclusively to sell either newspapers or get viewers to absorb whatever it is that they're trying to sell in between the little sketches or little things that you see on the TV. And unfortunately, that's one of the really difficult things about media. It's a business. It's not interested in a story. If it can whip up a storm and sell more papers or get more viewers to attract more advertising space, then that's what it's there to do. It's not there to represent me fairly or whatever. When it comes to role models are a really strange thing. On Saturday I'm going to like a trans event in just outside Camberley, and in that room, if you were to say where are the who is a trans role model, where are the trans role model, they're all in that room. They're all there, aren't they? They're all out in public doing their thing. So I think it very much depends on where you look, where you find these role models. They are out there in the community. What we have to do is we have to get them into like, not public spotlight, but into public perception. So things like Delia's work with organisations, some of the stuff that Becky's doing, that those people are out there and they're kind of setting a path and a safety framework for people to take steps out into, kind of like the same way the gay community had maybe 20 years ago. But it's very early on in those stages. And the last thing I'd say is that we actually live in a really positive time, fortunately, because the internet's there, isn't it? One of the things that the Beaumont organisation is particularly looking at the moment is you can try and work with the media, but it is a double-edged sword. It is going to bite you as often as it hurts you, probably twice as often as it helps you. But because of social media and Facebook and the internet and all these other kind of gadgets, YouTube that we're on there, hello people, we have the opportunity to be able to create our own media and our own culture. And that's one of our projects in 2013, to actually set up a media channel for trans people to promote themselves.